They glisten like fragments of starlight, frozen in time, untouched by decay. Diamonds, symbols of eternity, purity, and love. They are the treasures we slip onto fingers in moments of devotion, the jewels that sit at the heart of crowns, locked away in velvet-lined vaults, displayed behind glass as if they were relics of the divine. But what if I told you that some of the most dazzling diamonds in history have not been gifts of fortune, but harbingers of despair? What if behind their brilliance lies a darkness so deep it swallows kings, destroys dynasties, and whispers of blood spilled long ago? Every diamond carries a story. Some are stories of romance, power, and wealth, yet others are stories stained with treachery, with curses, with madness that clung to those who dared to claim them. In hushed tones, whispered in palace corridors or scrawled into forgotten journals, tales emerged of gems that brought not riches but ruin. Their beauty was unmatched, yes, but beauty in this case was a mask, concealing a history of betrayal, theft, and death. Imagine, for a moment, a hand reaching into a sacred temple in India, prying loose a gem that had watched silently for centuries. To the thief, it gleamed like destiny itself, wealth and power contained in a single stone. But to those who believed, that stone was no ordinary crystal. It was an eye of the gods, a relic never meant for mortal possession. And once stolen, it would demand a price. That price would echo through bloodlines, generations, and empires. Or picture a glittering ballroom in Paris, where noblewomen twirl under chandeliers, their jewels sparkling like captive stars. Among them, a stone burns a little colder, a little darker, the Hope Diamond, whose previous owners whispered of madness and death. Those who wore it laughed at superstition, until their heads rolled beneath the guillotine's blade. Was it chance? Was it fate? Or was the diamond itself carrying the memory of blood spilled centuries earlier? The allure of these stones is irresistible. They dazzle kings and queens, merchants and thieves alike. But every time they change hands, someone seems to pay a cost far greater than money. A fall from power, a sudden death, a slow descent into despair. It is as though the stones themselves are not inert but alive, listening, watching, waiting. And when the time comes, they do not hesitate to claim another victim. Skeptics may argue, curses are nothing more than stories, invented to explain coincidence, to wrap chaos in the cloak of narrative. And yet the weight of these tales refuses to die. They resurface, generation after generation, across cultures, across continents. From India to Russia, from France to Britain, each legend insists on the same chilling truth. Diamonds may sparkle in the light, but in the dark, they whisper the names of the damned. This is not merely history. It is a journey through shadows that cling to the brightest gems on earth. A journey that will take us from stolen idols to vanished empires, from glittering royal crowns to blood-soaked minds. Tonight, we descend into the stories that the jewelers won't tell you, the secrets that shine brightest when the lights go out. If this opening already sent a chill down your spine, just wait until you hear the stories behind the world's most haunted gems. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. It begins, as so many of these stories do, with an act of theft, not from a king's treasury, not from a merchant's chest, but from the hands of the divine itself. The legend of the Black Orlov diamond tells us that centuries ago, in the heart of India, there stood a statue of the Hindu god Brahma, serene and watchful. Embedded in the idol's eye was a gem unlike any other, a diamond so dark it seemed to hold the void of the universe within its core. Smooth, unyielding, and cut with precision long before Western jewelers ever touched it. The stone was said to symbolize eternity, divinity, and the unblinking gaze of the gods. But eternity was interrupted. One day, a man, perhaps a monk, perhaps a thief, pried the diamond from the idol. With that single act of desecration, the story tells us, the stone was transformed. No longer an emblem of divinity, it became a vessel of wrath, cursed to bring suffering to all who possessed it. The stone traveled far from its sacred home. By the 18th century, it surfaced in Russia, where it caught the eye of a noblewoman known as Princess Nadia Orlov. She adored the gem, its uncanny depth, the way it seemed to glow with a strange, smoky fire in candlelight. But the princess's fascination turned to dread. Whispers spread that the diamond had brought her misfortune, and in a final, desperate act, she leapt to her death from a building in Rome, the stone clutched tightly in her hands. She was not the only one. Another Russian princess, Leonila Galitzine-Baryatinsky, also tied to the diamond, ended her life in the same horrifying fashion, throwing herself from a height as if the stone itself had urged her to leap. Two women, bound by nobility, separated by circumstance, yet joined by a single jewel and the fatal pull it seemed to exert. The Black Orlov was passed again, and again through hands that sought its beauty and ignored its warnings. In New York during the 20th century, it belonged to jewelers and collectors who dreamed of taming its legend by remounting it, reshaping it, and surrounding it with smaller diamonds in an attempt to dilute its curse. They even recut it into a 67-carat gem, hoping to break the spell that lingered over it. But can a curse be cut away like excess stone? Or does it linger, embedded in the very carbon lattice of the gem itself, unchanged by human tools? Auction houses began to treat the Black Orlov like a spectacle, showcasing its notorious history alongside its glittering facets. Wealthy bidders, skeptical or fearless, paid vast sums to own it, as though daring the curse to test them. Yet each time it reappeared, the same unease clung to it, a murmur in the crowd, a collective shiver as the auctioneer's gavel fell. Was it coincidence that misfortune shadowed so many of its owners? Were the tragic deaths merely products of a dark imagination stitched to human grief? Or does the Black Orlov truly carry within it the fury of a god whose eye was stolen, a wrath that refuses to be silenced by centuries or borders? Today, the diamond rests in relative obscurity, sometimes displayed, sometimes hidden. Its story lingers like smoke, impossible to hold, impossible to ignore. What's undeniable is this. For over 300 years, the Black Orlov has been less a jewel and more a mirror, reflecting the one truth humans never wish to admit, that beauty often demands a terrible price. Few names in the world of gems stir the imagination as much as the Koh-i-Noor. Its very name, translated as Mountain of Light, promises brilliance, power, and eternity. But behind the dazzle lies a history so steeped in betrayal, conquest, and bloodshed that it has earned a reputation as one of the most cursed diamonds in existence. And yet, it rests today in one of the most famous crowns on earth, silently mocking the empires it outlasted, its brilliance laced with whispers of doom. The story begins in India, centuries ago, in the treasuries of rulers who considered the Koh-i-Noor not merely a jewel but a divine symbol. It was said to bring blessings to those who respected it, but to devour the pride of those who wore it with arrogance. As kingdoms rose and fell across the subcontinent, the stone became less a gift of fortune and more a trophy of conquest. Each time it changed hands, it did so not peacefully, but through blood, deception, or outright war. In the 18th century, it fell into the possession of the Persian ruler Nader Shah, a man as ruthless as he was ambitious. When he stormed Delhi, plundering the Mughal Empire, the diamond became his prize. Legends say that when he first laid eyes on it, he exclaimed in awe, "Koh-i-Noor," the name that would cling to it forever after. Yet his reign was short, and his violent death was seen as proof that the gem had begun its dark work. From there, the stone traveled across regions, claimed by Afghan kings and Sikh rulers, leaving behind a wake of assassinations, betrayals, and dynastic collapses. By the time it came into the hands of Maharaja Ranjit Singh of Punjab, the diamond was less an ornament and more a symbol of power, a declaration of divine right. But when the British Empire extended its reach into India in the mid-19th century, the stone once again became the spoils of conquest. It was during the annexation of Punjab that the Koh-i-Noor was formally ceded to Queen Victoria, presented not as a gift, but as a demand. The boy king, Duleep Singh, barely a teenager, was forced to surrender the diamond to the British crown. Imagine the scene, a child handing over a jewel that had outlasted empires, while the weight of colonial power pressed down on his shoulders. That act of surrender was not simply about a diamond. It was a symbolic stripping of sovereignty. In London, the Koh-i-Noor was recut to enhance its brilliance, but the curse, it seemed, was not so easily cut away. Rumors grew that no male monarch should ever wear the diamond, lest it bring about his downfall. Even in the heart of the British Empire, the whispers persisted. And so, a peculiar tradition emerged. The diamond would be worn only by queens. To this day, it rests in the crown once worn by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, displayed behind thick glass in the Tower of London. Kings pass by it but never place it on their heads. The superstition is unspoken but powerful. The jewel is too dangerous for a man to bear. Modern India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and even Iran have all laid claim to the Koh-i-Noor, demanding its return as a relic stolen from their histories. Yet Britain has refused, its officials brushing away the requests with legal and political justifications. But beneath those arguments lingers another fear. What if returning the diamond meant passing on its curse once again? The irony of the Koh-i-Noor is profound. It is both priceless and untouchable, coveted and feared. It has toppled dynasties, traveled continents, and outlived every man who claimed it. And now it sits still, silent but unyielding, a glittering relic of empire. Perhaps its curse is not one of sudden death, but of eternal conflict, a stone destined to remind humanity of the cost of greed, conquest, and power. It glows with an otherworldly fire, a deep, hypnotic blue that seems to shimmer even in the absence of light. To gaze upon the Hope Diamond is to feel as though you are staring into an abyss disguised as beauty, a jewel that radiates both allure and unease. Unlike clear diamonds, which reflect purity and brilliance, the Hope Diamond's color is something darker, heavier, almost unnatural. And perhaps that is why its legend has endured. Because from the moment it was pulled from the earth, its story was less about fortune and more about the madness it left in its wake. The tale begins in India, where the diamond is believed to have been part of a sacred statue. Some accounts claim it was the eye of a goddess, torn away in an act of blasphemous greed. The man who carried it out, a French merchant named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, brought the gem back to Europe in the 1600s, but with the stone came whispers. Soon after acquiring his fortune, Tavernier's life collapsed. Depending on the version you believe, he either died in poverty, was mauled by wild dogs, or simply faded into obscurity, all seen as fitting punishments for the man who dared to steal from the gods. The diamond then found its way into the hands of King Louis XIV of France. In his court, it was admired as the French blue, a stone that glittered like liquid midnight. But for all its beauty, it became a silent witness to catastrophe. Louis's reign ended in turmoil, his great-grandson perished young, and generations later, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who had both worn the jewel, were dragged to the guillotine. As their heads fell, the legend of the curse seemed undeniable. During the chaos of the French Revolution, the diamond vanished, as though swallowed by the storm it had helped to conjure. Decades later, it resurfaced in London, smaller now, recut to disguise its identity. By then it bore a new name, the Hope Diamond, after one of its owners, Henry Philip Hope. Yet even in this new chapter, its curse remained. Members of the Hope family endured scandal, financial ruin, and loss. The stone seemed to take more than it ever gave. Stories multiplied. A Turkish sultan who briefly possessed the diamond saw his reign collapse in chaos. A Greek merchant who acquired it was murdered by thieves. Even jewelers who touched it were said to meet untimely ends. Each tale fed the legend, weaving a tapestry of despair around a stone so beautiful that men and women could not resist it, even when they knew what it might cost them. By the 20th century, the Hope Diamond had become a global sensation, notorious as much for its history as for its beauty. In 1949, it was purchased by the jeweler Harry Winston, who, perhaps wary of its reputation, donated it to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. today. It sits behind bulletproof glass, admired by millions of visitors each year. Children press their faces to the glass, tourists snap photos, and scientists marvel at its unique properties. But for all the laughter and awe in that museum hall, There is always a hushed reverence when eyes fall on the Hope Diamond. It feels less like an exhibit and more like a presence. Skeptics insist the curse is nothing more than coincidence, a string of tragedies linked by imagination and fear. Yet even they cannot deny the stone's aura. To stand before it is to feel something unsettling, something that no photograph can capture. It is as if the Hope Diamond remembers. It remembers the temples it once watched over, the kings and queens who paraded it through gilded halls, the screams that echoed at the guillotine. It remembers and it waits. Perhaps that is the truest curse of all, not that the diamond destroys its owners, but that it seduces them first. It offers beauty, wealth, and prestige, only to snatch them away, leaving ruin in their place. A jewel that brings not joy but madness. It was said to glow like captured sunlight, a massive lemon-yellow gem of extraordinary brilliance, weighing over 130 carats. The Florentine diamond was no ordinary stone. It was a jewel that passed through the hands of dukes, emperors, and kings, each time leaving a mark of suspicion, betrayal, or tragedy in its wake. And unlike other famous cursed diamonds, the Florentine carries an additional layer of mystery. It has vanished. To this day, no one knows where it is, or whether its disappearance was an accident, or the final act of a curse determined to remove itself from human hands forever. The story of the Florentine begins, fittingly, in Italy. Some claim it originated in the Medici treasury of Florence, a city where art, power, and intrigue blended seamlessly. In the 17th century, it belonged to the Grand Duke of Tuscany, a ruler whose wealth and collection of jewels were legendary. The diamond was said to be so radiant that it seemed to shimmer even in candlelight, a beacon of wealth and authority. But wealth breeds envy, and power breeds enemies. The Medici dynasty, once untouchable, began to crumble. The Florentine diamond became a relic of a family in decline, its light casting shadows on those who clung too tightly to it. From Florence, the diamond traveled into the grasp of the Habsburg dynasty, one of Europe's most powerful ruling families. For generations, it sat in their imperial treasury in Vienna, glittering among other spoils of conquest. But if the Florentine was meant to symbolize stability and supremacy, it failed. The Habsburgs were plagued by internal strife, assassinations, and political upheavals. Empress Elizabeth of Austria, known as Sissi, was stabbed to death by an anarchist in 1898. Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination in 1914 ignited the First World War. Though the Florentine itself did not draw blood, it seemed to linger nearby whenever empires cracked and destinies unraveled. The diamond's most chilling chapter, however, came at the end of World War I as the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed. Emperor Charles I fled into exile. Among the possessions carried away in the chaos was the Florentine diamond, hastily packed and hidden. Some say it was smuggled to Switzerland. Others whisper it was stolen during the flight. A few believe it was sold in desperation, its identity disguised by recutting, its glory extinguished by human greed. Whatever the truth, the Florentine disappeared, swallowed by history's shadows. The idea that such a massive, unmistakable stone could simply vanish strains belief. How could something so large, so unique, so legendary simply be lost? And yet, that is precisely what makes the Florentine diamond one of history's greatest mysteries. Was it hidden away, waiting in some vault to be rediscovered? Was it deliberately destroyed to erase its curse? Or, as some romantics whisper, did the diamond choose to disappear, escaping the endless cycle of betrayal and blood that had defined its existence? Unlike the Koh-i-Noor or the Hope Diamond, which sit in museums or crowns, visible reminders of their haunted pasts, the Florentine diamond lingers only as a ghost. It exists in paintings, in dusty inventories, in whispered rumors, but not in reality. It is both absent and present, a curse without a body, a memory without a form. And perhaps that is the most haunting truth of all. A cursed jewel you can see, you can fear, you can lock away behind glass, but a cursed jewel that has vanished. That one belongs to the imagination, where it grows darker, more dangerous, more perfect with every retelling. Somewhere, hidden from the eyes of the world, the Florentine diamond may still wait, silent, gleaming, patient. And when it is found again, as all treasures eventually are, will it bring fortune? Or will it resume its long, tragic legacy? Up until now, the tales of cursed diamonds have felt like ghost stories, legends of stolen idols, fallen monarchs, vanished gems. But there is another kind of curse, one that does not live in myth or superstition. It is real, immediate, and devastating. It is not whispered in palaces or auction halls. It is screamed in the dust and mud of open-pit mines, in villages ripped apart by war, in the hollow eyes of children forced to dig for stones that will never bring them joy. These are the blood diamonds, the modern hauntings of the trade. To understand their curse, you must picture where they come from. Not velvet boxes in a jeweler's window, but riverbeds in Sierra Leone, fields in Angola, forests in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Here, diamonds are pried from the earth by bare hands, under the watch of armed men. They are currency for warlords, funding weapons and ammunition, prolonging conflicts that shred entire nations. Each stone pulled from the dirt carries not just light, but the weight of blood, a silent ledger of lives destroyed in its pursuit. During the brutal civil war in Sierra Leone, diamonds became the fuel for one of the most horrifying chapters of modern history. Militias forced civilians, even children, to work in mines under impossible conditions. Those who resisted paid with their lives. Villages were burned, families torn apart, and the profits from these stones flowed directly into the hands of those spreading terror. For those who held them, the diamonds glittered like victory. For those who dug them, they glittered like chains. And it is not only the violence of war that haunts these gems. The environmental scars left by unregulated mining strip away forests, poison rivers, and erase landscapes. Communities that once relied on the land for survival are left with barren soil and polluted water. What is left behind is not prosperity but ruin, a curse cast not by unseen forces but by human hands. The global market has tried to cleanse itself of this stain. The Kimberley process, introduced in 2003, was meant to ensure that diamonds sold in shops were conflict-free. Yet critics argue it is riddled with loopholes, more about appearances than accountability. Diamonds with questionable origins still find their way into legitimate markets. The curse continues, hidden in plain sight, glittering on engagement rings and necklaces across the world. And here lies the most unsettling question. When someone buys a diamond today, can they ever truly know its history? Could that gem, sparkling in the jewelry store's light, have once been clenched in the dirt-covered hand of a child soldier? Could it have been exchanged for bullets, for blood, for power? This is the modern curse, not mystical, not supernatural, but moral. It asks us to look into the mirror of desire and see what cost we are willing to ignore for the sake of beauty. The haunted diamonds of history destroyed kings and queens. The haunted diamonds of today destroy the nameless, the powerless, those who will never live to see the wealth their suffering created. Perhaps the most chilling thought of all is this. Legends of the Black Orlov, the Koh-i-Noor, or the Hope Diamond may leave us unsettled, but they belong to the past. Blood diamonds belong to the present. They are not relics of curses long gone. They are living curses, moving silently through the global economy, polished and sold as symbols of love, while their true story is buried beneath silence and denial. And if history has taught us anything, it is this: diamonds never forget the hands that touch them. Why do these stories never die? Why, in a world that prides itself on science and reason, do we still whisper about cursed diamonds, haunted jewels, and the misfortunes they supposedly carry? The answer lies not in the stones themselves, but in us, in the fragile architecture of human desire, fear, and memory. Diamonds are more than carbon compressed by time. They are symbols of wealth, of love, of eternity. They hold the weight of promises and the shadow of greed. And when something carries that much meaning, it is bound to attract stories that echo both our hopes and our darkest anxieties. We call them cursed because, deep down, we sense that our hunger for them might come at a cost. Think of it, every tale of a cursed gem is not just about the jewel, but about the people who touched it. A king who craved power and lost his throne. A queen who bathed in luxury and met a violent end. A tycoon who thought himself untouchable but fell into ruin. These are not random accidents. They are morality plays carved into history. The diamond becomes the stage, and we project our own fears onto it. Psychologists call this the human need for pattern seeking. When tragedy strikes, we search for meaning. We do not want to believe in coincidence because coincidence feels like chaos. A diamond, beautiful, eternal, mysterious, becomes the perfect vessel for our explanations. It is easier to say, "This stone is cursed," than to face the unsettling truth that fate is blind, that power corrupts, that greed often carries its own destruction. And yet there is another layer, one far more intimate. When we look at cursed diamonds, we see our own reflection. The desire that drove kings to steal, queens to hoard, and collectors to covet is not alien to us. It is in us. We crave beauty, status, and the promise that something eternal can belong to us. The curse, then, is not in the stone, but in the hunger it awakens, a hunger that has toppled dynasties and still fuels industries built on suffering. That is why these stories endure, because they are not simply about the past, they are mirrors. They force us to ask uncomfortable questions. What would I do if I held such a gem in my hand? Would I give it up, fearing its shadow? Or would I keep it, telling myself the curse is just a story? Even in love, the diamond carries its double edge. It is the symbol of forever, yet it comes with the knowledge, whether whispered in myths or hidden in supply chains, that forever may carry shadows. It asks whether our pursuit of permanence blinds us to the impermanence of those who suffered for it. And so the legends live on, not because diamonds truly curse us, but because we need them to. We need them to remind us that beauty can be dangerous, that desire can devour, that wealth can be fleeting. We keep these tales alive because they are warnings disguised as folklore, parables etched into stone. Perhaps that is the truest curse of all. Not that the diamond destroys those who touch it, but that we, generation after generation, cannot stop reaching for it, even as history whispers its caution. Every legend must end with a choice. And when it comes to haunted diamonds, the final question is never about the stone itself, it is about us. Throughout history, rulers, collectors, and dreamers stood at the same crossroads. In their hands gleamed an object of impossible beauty, a fragment of eternity, carved by the earth itself. But surrounding it was a shadow, a history of bloodshed, betrayal, and downfall. Some chose to believe in the curse and passed the diamond away as if it were poisoned. Others laughed at superstition, only to meet fates that seemed to echo the warnings they dismissed. But what about us today? We live in an age where reason tells us that stones cannot kill, cannot curse, cannot whisper in the night. And yet, why do we hesitate? Why, when told we could own one of these infamous jewels, does something tighten in the chest? Why do we imagine the worst, an accident, a betrayal, a loss, as if the diamond could punish us for our ambition? The truth is, every cursed gem carries with it a mirror. It forces us to confront the human condition, our greed, our longing, our need to possess what glitters brightest, no matter the cost. We speak of curses, but what we truly fear is ourselves. That hunger inside us that once drove empires to conquest, that drove miners into darkness, that still drives markets worth billions today. And so, the curse lives not in the stone, but in the stories we tell about it. Stories that remind us of mortality, of consequence, of the price of desire. A diamond does not choose its owner, but it reveals them. It shows whether they are willing to face the weight of its history, or whether they will turn away, convinced they can outshine the shadows. In the end, perhaps the greatest curse of all is indifference. To wear a diamond without hearing the voices behind it. To enjoy its beauty without feeling the chill of its past. To forget that what sparkles on a finger or in a crown may have once been the downfall of kings, the ruin of dynasties, the whispered fear of centuries. And so, as we close this journey through haunted gems, the final question remains. When you look at such a diamond, do you see only the sparkle, or do you hear the whisper? Do you call it cursed, or do you call it chosen? Before you go, if this journey into the glittering shadows stirred something in you, don't let it end here. Subscribe, like, and share, because there are more stories hidden in the world's treasures, waiting to be unearthed. And who knows? The next legend might just change the way you see beauty forever.